at the other type of loop as promised, which is called a while loop. So with this loop, we're basically looping on a condition. So the previous loop that we were doing was a count controlled loop. So it would do it a number of times, even if it was a list, or even if we had selection, which was a condition if statement inside of the for loop, it still did the loop a number of times, where this one is only going to loop based on a condition. So this is a condition controlled loop. Okay, so it's iteration again, right? All this terminology can be a bit confusing sometimes, but iteration's this repetition that you can do, and then condition control loop based on some sort of condition, it will then loop. And the previous one was a count controlled loop. So here we're going to call this, it's a while loop, and we can put today's date, and then we put the author. Right, okay, so how do we work this out? So we will do a loop just with a number. So we're going to have a counter called C, and we'll put a comment there just saying counter int, right? So it's an integer, good way to do that. And then the while loop, we'll just go straight into the while loop, and we'll just say, well, while C is less than 10. Okay, so while C is less than 10, what do we want to do? Well, we want to print C. Okay, so this is going to, at the moment, what's going to happen in this loop, we're going to print this how many times? Well, at the moment, it's going to print for infinity. And the reason why it's a closed loop, which basically means that it just keeps on going on and on and on, is because C never changes. So if C is equal to 0, it's just going to print 0 forever. And you can see this is something that you probably don't want to do really in your program, because your program essentially gets stuck doing one thing forever. Right, so I'm going to just give this a name, basic while loop. Save that. And let's see it happen, right? So it's just going, printing out zeros, and it's going to just do that forever and ever until I stop the program. So what do we want to do with it? Well, we want to increment this. Now, the way to increment C, you can't just say C is equal to 1, right? That's changing C from 0 and changing it into 1. So we can't do that. We have to say C is equal to itself plus 1. So there's a couple of ways of doing this. This is just one way, and I'm writing it this way, like this, so it's easier for you to understand. And what it's saying is C is equal to 0. So C is now going to change to be itself, or what it is at the minute. So what is it at the minute? It's 0 plus 1, so it's going to make it 1. Then when we go round the loop, we're going to say, well, first time we go around the loop, C is equal to 0, so we're going to say, is C less than 10? Yes, the answer is yes. So we print this, and then we also change it to plus 1. So C is 0 plus 1, it becomes 1. Go around again, is C less than 10? Yes, print that. And then 1 plus 1 is 2. Is 2 less than 10? Yes, print 2, and so on. So if we run this, it'll eventually stop when it reaches 10, and you can see it's done that. So when C is equal to 10, it's no longer less than 10. So that means that it's only going to print from 0 to 9. Now, if we wanted to do, for example, 10 as well, well, we could either do less than 11. That's one way of doing it. Right? So you get 10 as well. Or you could do something like that, where you do less than or equal to. So these are obviously comparison operators, and there's just several ways of doing these kind of things. So we're just going to leave that like that for the moment. Now, the other thing that we want to look at, as I said, there's a couple of ways of writing this increment. So this is the easiest way, as I say, to understand it, that you're reassigning this variable, which is an integer, right? Because we're saying it's an integer here, and we're reassigning it to be whatever it happens to be at this given moment in time plus 1. And you can see it's happening that C begins being 0, then it's changed to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. So the other way to write this would be to do plus equals 1. Looks a little bit weird when you first see it. You might think, oh, what the hell's going on here? But this is just saying to increment. So C is equal to itself plus 1. And if we run this, you'll see it'll do exactly the same. Okay, so it's going to go up to 9 because I reset it to be exactly the way it was before. But it's doing exactly the same thing. Now, just out of interest, you could imagine if you want to decrement, which would be negative. So you could do negative equals 1 as an example, but you don't have to do an increment of 1. You could do an increment of 2 or a decrement of 2 or 3 or any number you want, really. And you could also do it with other operators such as multiplies, right? So C is equal to itself multiplied by 2. That's another way to do it too. So you could do all of these things. This is probably the most common one that you will use with some of your little programs that you'll do in the future, where you're just wanting to increment a number by 1 at any given time. Now, we can also break out of this loop before it gets to 9 here. Now, that would be to have another condition within this. So this loop's going to finish if it gets to 9, or sorry, it gets to 10. If C gets to 10, then it's going to finish the loop and break out of the loop. But we could break out of the loop earlier if we wanted to. So we could look at how that happens, and we could just do this by saying, well, we put a selection statement in it. So if C is equal to, let's say, 6, then we're going to break it. Okay, so it's going to break out of that, and then it won't do this increment either. So it'll do this print. So while C is less than 10, we will print C. So it's going to print 0. Then is C equal to 6? No. Then it's going to do the increment to 1. And when it gets to 6, it'll print 6 and then stop there and break out of it. So run this, and you can see that we've broken out of the loop earlier than we should have, because it should have gone up to 9 normally, but because we've done this extra bit of selection with a break, special keyword there for this to break out of the loop, and you can see what it's done there. And of course, you could also do something like continue as well. Now, if I do continue here, you'll see it might look a little bit funny. It'll go into, and yes, you've guessed it, it's gone into a forever loop. And that's because it's not then continuing to increment our C, it's staying at 6. So what I would have to do is actually change that increment to be before. And if I do it now, it's then just going to do it like it did before. It's going to continue on and then finish the loop eventually. So that's a couple of things that you're learning from this second video on while loops, that you can just do these couple of things.